My 14-hour shift ended in horror when I found my parking spot empty. My mother's voicemail explained it casually. Connor needed a ride to the lake, so they gave him my car. Hours later, he totaled it. When they demanded I absorb the cost for family, I served them a lawsuit that cost them everything. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The automatic doors of St. Jude's Medical Center slid open with a hiss that sounded far too loud in the pre-dawn silence. I stepped out into the cool, damp air of the parking garage, the smell of wet concrete and exhaust fumes hitting me instantly. It wasn't a pleasant smell, but to me, in that moment, it was the scent of freedom. I rolled my shoulders back, hearing a satisfying pop in my upper spine. My scrubs felt heavy, stained with the invisible weight of a 14-hour overnight shift in the ER. It had been a brutal night. We had a multi-car pileup on the interstate come in around 2:00 a.m., followed by a string of overdose cases that left the entire nursing staff ragged. I looked down at my hands. They were dry, the skin around my knuckles cracked from scrubbing in and out 100 times. I was dehydrated. My head was pounding with a dull, rhythmic throb behind my eyes, and my feet felt like they were encased in cement blocks rather than orthopedic sneakers. But it was over. That was the only thought cycling through my brain as I trudged toward Level 3, Section B. It's over. Bed, sleep, silence. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the cool metal of my keychain. I didn't even look up as I walked the familiar path I took every single day. I knew exactly where I had parked, spot 304, right next to the structural pillar that always made it a pain to open the passenger door. I didn't care about the pillar. I loved that car. It was a charcoal gray SUV, 3 years old, bought with cash I had saved for 5 years. It represented every overtime shift, every missed holiday, every skipped social event. It was the first thing I had ever owned that was truly, completely mine. No cosigners, no bank loans, just my sweat and equity sitting on 4 wheels. I pressed the unlock button on the fob, expecting the familiar chirp-chirp and the flash of amber lights. Nothing happened. I frowned, stopping in the middle of the driving lane. I pressed it again. Maybe the battery in the fob was dead? I took 2 more steps, lifting my head properly for the first time since leaving the elevator. My eyes scanned spot 304. It was empty. I blinked, literally shaking my head as if to clear a hallucination. Fatigue could do strange things to you. I looked at the pillar. The yellow paint scrape from someone else's bad parking job was there. I looked at the number painted on the asphalt, 304. I looked at the cars on either side. A red Civic I recognized from one of the radiology techs, and a beat-up truck belonging to a custodian. My car was gone. A cold spike of adrenaline shot through me, instantly vaporizing the exhaustion. It started in my stomach and seized my chest. I spun around, scanning the rows. Did I park on Level 2? No, I never parked on Level 2. It was always full by the time my shift started. I checked Level 3 again. I walked up and down 2 aisles, my heart rate climbing from a resting thud to a frantic hammering. No, 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 I whispered, my voice cracking in the empty garage. It had been stolen. That was the only explanation. Someone had broken into the secure staff garage, bypassed the security cameras, and taken my car. My lifeline. My only way to get back to my apartment, which was 30 minutes away. My only way to get to my second job at the clinic on weekends. My hands started to shake. I fumbled for my phone, pulling it out of my scrub pocket. The screen was bright, blinding in the dim garage. I had 3 missed calls and 1 voicemail. I stared at the screen. The missed calls were from Mom. The voicemail was from Mom. A strange, sinking feeling replaced the panic. It was a heavy, leaden sensation in my gut. Why was Linda calling me at 4:00 a.m.? Was there an emergency? Did something happen to Dad? I pressed play on the voicemail, holding the phone to my ear with a trembling hand, standing in the empty void of spot 304. Caroline, honey, my mother's voice chirped. She sounded awake, too awake. She sounded breezy, light, completely at odds with the time of day. Don't panic when you go to the garage. Your father and I swung by around midnight with the spare key. Connor needed a ride up to the lake house for a weekend thing with some friends. You know how stressed he's been lately with the job hunt, and his car is still in the shop. So Dad drove him up in your SUV. He'll bring it back eventually. Probably Sunday night. Just taking you. Burr home, sweetie. Love you. The message ended with a soft click. I stood there, frozen. The silence of the garage rushed back in, deafening. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at the concrete where my tires should have been. They took it, they didn't ask. They didn't text to check if I needed it. They just took it, because Connor needed it. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, molten rage. The betrayal wasn't just about the theft. It was the casual assumption that my property was communal property the moment my golden child brother had a whim. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. I didn't call an Uber immediately. I couldn't. My fingers were shaking too badly to navigate the app. Instead, I walked over to the concrete pillar, the one my car should have been next to, and leaned against it, sliding down until I was crouching on the dirty floor of the parking garage. I put my head between my knees, trying to force air into my lungs. Connor needed a ride to the lake house. The sentence played on a loop in my mind, distorting with every repetition. Connor, my 25-year-old brother who had never held a job for longer than 6 months. Connor, who needed a weekend getaway to recover from the stress of a job hunt that consisted mostly of playing video games in my parents' basement and occasionally updating his LinkedIn profile. I dialed my mother. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed my father, Harvey. Ring, ring, ring. Hello, his voice was groggy, thick with sleep. Where is my car? I asked. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask how he was. My voice was low, barely a whisper, but it vibrated with intensity. Caroline, he yawned loudly. What time is it? Jesus, it's 5 a.m. Where is my car? Your mother left you a message, Harvey said, his tone shifting from sleepy to defensive. Don't start with the drama, Caroline. You know Connor has been down in the dumps. This trip is good for him. Networking opportunities, he said. You stole my car, Dad, I said, standing up. My legs felt weak, but my voice was gaining strength. You came to my workplace, used a spare key I gave you for emergencies only, and you stole my vehicle. I am stranded at the hospital after a 14-hour shift. Oh, stop it, he snapped. You're not stranded. Uber exists. We'll pay you back for the ride. Stop being so selfish. Your brother needed a reliable vehicle. You know that old sedan of his is a death trap. My car is not a community bicycle, Dad. I need it. I have shifts all weekend. How am I supposed to get back here tomorrow night? You'll figure it out, he said dismissively. You're the smart one, right? You always figure it out. Just let Connor have this weekend. He needs a win. We're a family, Caroline. We help each other. He didn't ask me, I shouted, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. You didn't ask me. If we asked, you would have said no, Harvey said. The honesty of the statement hit me like a physical slap. You've been so stingy lately, hoarding your money, acting like you're better than us because you finished nursing school. It's just a car, Caroline. It's a hunk of metal. People are more important than things. I'm a person, Dad, I said, my voice breaking. I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count? There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy silence where I could hear him breathing. Look, I'm going back to sleep, he said finally. Take a cab, send us the bill, but don't you dare call Connor and ruin his trip. Let him enjoy himself. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the black screen reflecting my own exhausted, horrified face. Don't ruin his trip. That was the priority. Not my safety, not my livelihood, not my property rights. Connor's mood. I opened the Uber app. The surge pricing was active. A ride home would cost me $65. $65 of my money to fix a problem they created. I sat in the back of the Toyota Camry that picked me up, watching the city lights blur past the window. The rage was settling now, hardening into something cold and sharp in my chest. I thought about the spare key. I had given it to them 3 years ago when I moved into my new apartment, specifically saying, in case I get locked out or end up in a coma. I remembered something else then. A conversation I'd had with my insurance agent 6 months ago when I renewed my policy. We had discussed adding drivers. I had explicitly removed everyone but myself from the policy to lower the premium because no one else ever drove my car. And there was one other thing, a detail so small my parents obviously hadn't considered it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the original dealer paperwork I kept in a folder. I had brought it to work because I was planning to stop at the DMV on Monday to update my registration address. I looked at the title document. My name, only my nom. Hey. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I whispered to the empty air of the Uber. They assumed that because I was their daughter, the laws of ownership didn't apply. They assumed that family was a magic word that erased theft. They were about to find out how wrong they were. To understand why my parents felt comfortable commandeering a $30,000 vehicle without permission, you have to understand Connor. Connor was the miracle baby. Born 6 years after me, he was colicky, demanding, and utterly adored. Where I was expected to be self-sufficient, Connor was to be protected. If I got a B on a report card, I was grounded. If Connor failed a class, it was the teacher's fault for not engaging him. As we grew into adults, the dynamic calcified. I worked through nursing school, taking loans, working nights as a CNA, refusing to ask for a dime because I knew it would come with strings attached. Connor tried college for a semester, dropped out because the dorms were too loud, and then proceeded to cycle through a series of passions. He was going to be a DJ, then a crypto trader, then a landscape architect. Through it all, Linda and Harvey were his safety net. They paid his rent when he decided to move out for 3 months. They paid his court fees when he got a DUI. They bought him the sedan he currently owned and neglected. I, on the other hand, was the bank of last resort. Caroline, can you lend your brother $200 for groceries? Caroline, Connor's phone got cut off. Can you put him on your plan? I had started saying no 2 years ago. It was a hard boundary to set. It caused fights at Thanksgiving. It caused my mother to cry and accuse me of being cold-hearted, but I stuck to it. I built my own life, brick by brick. My apartment was clean and quiet. My credit score was excellent. My car was the crown jewel of my independence. It was a symbol that I didn't need them, and I think, deep down, that's why they took it. I got home around 5:30 a.m. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee that tasted like battery acid, staring at the wall. At 7:15 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring. It rang again immediately. I picked it up. I'm not paying for his gas, Mom, if that's what you're calling about. Caroline, Linda's voice was different this time. The breezy, dismissive tone was gone. In its place was a high-pitched, frantic tremolo. Caroline, are you sitting down? My stomach dropped. Despite everything, despite the theft, the disrespect, the exhaustion, the nurse in me kicked in. What happened? Is it Dad? No, she sobbed. It's Connor. It's oh God, Caroline, there was an accident. I stood up, gripping the edge of the table. Is he okay? He's at the hospital in Lakeview. He has a broken collarbone and a concussion. He's okay. He's alive. Thank God he's alive. And the car? I asked. My voice was flat. The car? She let out a hysterical little laugh. Caroline, your brother is in the hospital. How can you ask about the car? Is the car drivable, Mom? No, she shrieked. It's gone. He went off the road. He said a deer jumped out. He swerved and hit a tree. The airbags went off. It's a total loss, the police said. I closed my eyes. My beautiful paid-off SUV, wrapped around a tree 3 hours away. Okay, I said calmly. I'm glad he's alive. I'll call my insurance company. Wait, Linda said. The sobbing stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with a terrifying implication. About that. About what? Well, she stammered, we know you have good insurance, full coverage. But well, Connor's license, it's suspended. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? It was just a ticket, a mistake. He forgot to pay a speeding ticket and they suspended it last week. He didn't tell us until just now. You let him drive my car with a suspended license, I whispered. We didn't know, she defended, her voice rising again. But Caroline, listen to me, you have to help us. When you call the insurance, just say you were driving. Excuse me. Say you were driving, she repeated, speaking faster now, desperate. If they know Connor was driving, they won't cover it. And he'll go to jail for driving while suspended. You have to say you were up there, say you crashed it. You have a clean record. Your rates will just go up a little. We'll pay the difference. I promise. You want me to commit insurance fraud? It's not fraud, it's protecting your family, Linda screamed. He's your brother, he's hurt. Are you really going to kick him when he's down? Just say you were driving. Please, for me, for Dad. I looked around my apartment. I looked at my nursing degree on the wall. I looked at the empty space on my keychain where my fob used to be. They had stolen my car, destroyed it. And now they wanted me to risk my nursing license, my freedom, and my financial future to see over up their golden child's crime. I'll handle it, I said quietly. Oh, thank you, sweetie, Linda exhaled, the relief palpable. I knew you'd do the right thing. I knew you loved us. I'll handle it, I repeated. I hung up the phone. I didn't call my insurance agent. I dialed 3 numbers. 911. Emergency, police, fire, or ambulance. Police, I said, my voice steady as steel. I need to report a grand theft auto. The police dispatcher was calm, her voice a flat, professional drone that contrasted sharply with the hurricane spinning inside my chest. I sat at my kitchen table, my hand gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were white. Sunlight was beginning to creep through the blinds, casting long, jagged shadows across the floor, but the world felt darker than it had at midnight. I need you to state your location and the nature of the incident again, ma'am, the dispatcher said. I am at my apartment, I said, reciting my address automatically. My vehicle was taken from the employee parking garage at St. Jude's Medical Center sometime between 6:00 p.m. yesterday and 4:00 a.m. today. I have confirmation of who took it, and it has subsequently been involved in a collision in Lakeview. Do you know the person who took the vehicle? Yes, I said. The word felt like a stone in my throat. My parents, Linda and Harvey, they used a spare key I gave them for medical emergencies to access the car without my knowledge or consent. They gave the vehicle to my brother, Connor, who was driving it when the accident occurred. And you did not give permission for this trip? No, I was working a 14-hour shift. I found the car missing when I walked out to the lot. Okay, an officer will be dispatched to your location to take a formal report. Since the accident happened in a different jurisdiction, we need to get the theft report filed here first to establish the chain of events. Do not, I repeat, do not, contact the parties involved until you have spoken to the officer. I understand. I hung up and sat in the silence. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I knew what I was doing. I was crossing the Rubicon. By filing this report, I was turning a family dispute into a criminal matter. I was putting my brother, the golden child, in the crosshairs of the legal system. But then I thought about the alternative. I thought about Linda's voice, shrill and demanding. Just say you were driving. If I did that, I would be lying to a federal insurance investigator. That was a felony. If I was caught, and insurance investigators were good at their jobs, they would track my phone GPS, check the hospital security cameras, interview my coworkers. I would lose my nursing license. I would be blacklisted. The career I had spent 6 years building, the only thing that gave me stability and purpose, would be incinerated to save Connor from a misdemeanor. They weren't asking for a favor. They were asking for a human sacrifice. Officer Miller arrived 40 minutes later. He was a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a notebook that looked like it had survived a war. He sat at my small dining table, declining the coffee I offered. "Okay, Miss Caroline," he said, clicking his pen. "Walk me through it from the beginning." I told him everything. I detailed the timeline of my shift. I showed him the gap in my keychain where the fob usually was. I explained the specific parking spot. And then, with a shaking hand, I played him the voicemail. Officer Miller leaned in, his head cocked to the side, listening to Linda's breezy, cheerful voice echoing from the speakerphone. "Don't panic, Dad drove him up in your SUV. He'll bring it back eventually." When the message ended, Officer Miller let out a low whistle. He looked at me, his expression shifting from bureaucratic indifference to genuine sympathy. "That's a confession," he said bluntly. "They admit to taking it without your prior knowledge, and they admit to giving possession to a third party." "My brother," I clarified, "Connor." "Does Connor have a valid license?" Miller asked, writing something down. "My mother told me this morning that it's suspended," I said, "which is why they want me to lie to the insurance company." Miller stopped writing. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. "They asked you to lie." "They want me to say I was driving," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "So the insurance will cover the total loss." Miller closed his notebook with a snap. "Okay, here is what's going to happen. I am filing a report for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Because the car is totaled, this escalates the property damage value significantly. I'm going to give you a case number. You call your insurance company immediately. You give them this case number. You tell them the car was taken without permission and you were at work. You do not lie for them. If you lie, you become an accessory to insurance fraud." He stood up, handing me a small card with a number scrawled on it. "You're doing the right thing," he said, seeing the tears welling in my eyes. "Family is family, but the law doesn't care about blood when fraud is involved. Protect yourself." I nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. As he walked out the door, I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't relief, exactly. It was the cold, hard clarity of a soldier putting on armor. I dialed my insurance company. I spent 45 minutes on the phone with a claims adjuster named Sarah. I gave her the case number. I gave her the hospital's HR number to verify my shift hours. I sent her the audio file of the voicemail. "We'll take it from here, Caroline," Sarah said, her voice crisp and efficient. "Since you've filed a police report for theft, your liability is 0. We will pursue the driver for the damages." "The driver is my brother," I whispered. "We will pursue the driver," she repeated, her tone professional but firm. "You are not responsible for his actions." I hung up. The trap was set. Not a trap I had built for them, but a trap they had walked into the moment they decided my boundaries didn't exist. Now I had to tell them. I waited until noon. I needed the sleep, but my body wouldn't shut down. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, rehearsing the conversation in my head. I knew exactly how it would go. I knew the script. They would play the victim. Then they would get angry. Then they would threat. I sat up, swung my legs over the side of the bed, and grabbed my phone. 5 missed calls from Linda. 2 from Harvey. 1 from a number I didn't recognize, probably the hospital in Lakeview or Connor using a nurse's phone. I called Linda. She answered on the first ring. "Caroline, thank God, did you call the insurance? Did you tell them?" "I called them," I said. I kept my voice low, steady, devoid of the emotion that was threatening to choke me. "Oh, wonderful," Linda sighed, the tension draining from her voice instantly. "I knew you'd come through. You're a good sister, Caroline. We're so relieved. Connor is being discharged soon. He just needs a sling. We can put this whole nightmare behind us." I gave them the police case number, I said. There was a silence on the line. It wasn't a quiet silence. It was the sudden, vacuum-sealed silence of an airlock snapping shut. "The what?" Linda asked. Her voice was very small. I filed a police report, Mom, I said, pronouncing every syllable clearly. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. I gave the case number to the insurance company. I sent them the voicemail you left me proving you took the car without my permission. And I verified my employment hours to prove I was at the hospital when the crash happened. You did what? I told the truth. You called the police on your brother? Her voice exploded into a shriek that forced me to pull the phone away from my ear. Are you insane? Caroline, are you out of your mind? He destroyed my car, Mom. He was driving with a suspended license. And you asked me to commit a felony to cover it up. I am not going to jail for Connor. I am not losing my nursing license for Connor. You selfish, ungrateful little. I heard a scuffle on the line, and then my father's voice boomed through the speaker. Caroline, what the hell is going on? Harvey roared. Your mother is hyperventilating. Did you seriously report the car stolen? It was stolen, Dad, I said. You took it, you didn't ask, that is theft. We are your parents, Harvey shouted. We bought you diapers, we raised you, you don't call the cops on family, you fix this. You call them back right now and you tell them it was a misunderstanding. You tell them you gave us permission. I can't do that, Dad. The report is filed. The insurance investigation has already started. If I change my story now, I go to prison for filing a false police report and insurance fraud. It's done. You vindictive bitch, Harvey spat. The venom in his voice was something I had never heard directed at me before. It was the way he talked about bad employees or politicians he hated, not his daughter. You did this on purpose. You wanted to hurt him. You've always been jealous of him. Jealous, I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. Jealous of what? He's 25, unemployed, lives in your basement, and just totaled a stolen car. What exactly am I jealous of, Dad? The fact that you enable him to be a loser. Don't you talk about your brother like that. I'm done, Dad, I said. I'm not paying for this. I'm not accepting the liability. Connor crashed it. Connor pays for it, or you do, but I am washing my hands of it. If you go through with this, Harvey said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl, if you let them arrest your brother, don't bother coming for Christmas. Don't bother coming for birthdays. You are dead to us. The words hit me hard, like a physical blow. W to the stomach. I had expected anger. I had expected screaming. But the formal excommunication, the immediate disposal of 28 years of being the good one. It hurt, God, it hurt. But beneath the pain, there was that cold, steel resolve again. If that's the price of not ruining my life for Connor, I said, then so be it. You'll regret this, Harvey said. You'll be all alone, Caroline, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. I'd rather be alone than be used, I said. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it onto the duvet. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the apartment wrapping around me. I was alone. Technically, Harvey was right. I was alone in my apartment, alone in the city, and now, alone in the world. But then I looked at the empty spot on my keychain, and I realized that I had been alone for a long time. They had just been filling the space with noise and demands. I stood up and went to the kitchen. I made a fresh pot of coffee. I had to be at work in 4 hours. I had patients to see. I had a life to live. And I had a war to fight, because I knew with absolute certainty that Harvey and Linda were not going to give up. They were cornered animals now, and cornered animals bite. The backlash began 48 hours later. I was at the nurse's station, updating a patient's chart, when my personal phone started buzzing in my pocket. It didn't stop. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I ignored it until my break, then pulled it out in the locker room. 15 text messages. Some from numbers I knew, aunts, cousins, family, friends. Some from numbers I didn't. Aunt Brenda, Caroline, I can't believe you would do this to your parents. Connor is just a boy. Drop the charges. Cousin Mike, police. Really? That's low, even for you. Unknown, your mom is devastated. You need to fix this. They had launched a smear campaign. They were controlling the narrative, telling everyone that I was a vindictive, heartless sister who had snapped over a simple misunderstanding and was trying to ruin Connor's life out of spite. They conveniently left out the part about the suspended license, the insurance fraud request, and the theft. I blocked the numbers, one by one, block, block, block. But they didn't stop with the family. 3 days after the crash, I received a call from a Detective Reynolds in Lakeview, the jurisdiction where the crash happened. "Ms. Caroline," Reynolds said. His voice was harder than Officer Miller's had been. "I'm following up on the collision report involving your vehicle. I've spoken with your brother, Mr. Connor, and your parents." "Okay," I said, stepping out into the hospital hallway to find a quiet corner. "They are stating that there was a verbal agreement," Reynolds said. "They claim you gave explicit verbal permission for Connor to take the car on Thursday night, provided he filled the tank. They say you are now filing a false theft report to cover the fact that you knowingly lent a vehicle to a suspended driver, which would void your insurance." I leaned my head against the cool drywall. They were doubling down. They were trying to flip the script. If they could convince the police that I gave permission, the theft charge would vanish. And if the theft charge vanished, the insurance company would deny the claim because the driver was unlicensed and unlisted. I would be left with a totaled car, no payout, and a potential criminal charge for filing a false report. It was a desperate, vicious gamble. It was also a lie. "Did they say when this verbal agreement happened?" I asked calmly. "They stated they came to your apartment on Thursday evening around 7:00 p.m., picked up the keys from you directly, and you discussed it then." I felt a rush of triumph, so potent it nearly made me dizzy. "Detective," I said, "on Thursday evening at 7:00 p.m., I was in the middle of a trauma code in the ER. I have witnesses. I have security footage of me entering the hospital at 5:45 p.m. and not leaving until 6:00 a.m. the next morning. I was nowhere near my apartment." "You were at work." "I can have the hospital legal department send you the time-stamped security logs and a sworn affidavit from my charge nurse within the hour. My parents are lying. They used the spare key they've had for years. I was never at my apartment." There was a long pause. I could hear Reynolds typing on a keyboard. "If that's true," Reynolds said slowly, "then their statement to me is a demonstrable falsehood filed during an active investigation." "It is true," I said, "and detective, I have one more thing." "Go on." "My apartment complex," I said. "I live in a building with a secure lobby. There are cameras at the entrance and in the hallways. If you pull the footage from Thursday night, you will see my parents entering the building with their own key, entering my apartment while I wasn't there, staying for 5 minutes and leaving. You will not see me." "You have cameras." "Everywhere," I lied. "Well, partially. The lobby had cameras, the hallway didn't. But Reynolds didn't know that, and Harvey and Linda definitely didn't know that. I can ask the landlord to preserve the footage." "I'll contact the landlord," Reynolds said. His tone had shifted completely. He wasn't suspicious of me anymore, he was annoyed at being played. "Ms. Caroline, if the hospital logs check out, your family is in a significant amount of trouble. Making a false statement to a police officer is a crime. Obstruction is a crime, and that's on top of the auto theft. I just want the truth on the record, detective. I'll be in touch." I hung up and immediately went to the hospital administration office. I requested my logs. I requested the footage. As I walked back to the ER, I realized something terrifying. My parents were willing to send me to jail. By claiming I gave permission to a suspended driver, they were trying to pin a crime on me to save Connor. They weren't just bad parents. They were my enemies. That evening, I went home and dug through an old box in my closet. I was looking for something specific. Years ago, when Connor had his first legal trouble, a shoplifting charge when he was 19, I had bylaid him out. I kept the paperwork. I found it, but I found something else I had forgotten about. a letter from the DMV sent to my parents' house that I had accidentally opened years ago regarding Connor's driving record. I had kept it because I was worried about him. I looked at the dates. Connor had 3 DUIs, 3, not 1 speeding ticket like Linda claimed, 3. The suspension wasn't for an unpaid ticket. It was a court-ordered revocation. If he was driving my car with a revoked license due to multiple DUIs and he crashed it, that wasn't a misdemeanor. That was a felony aggravated unlicensed operation. And my parents knew. They knew he wasn't allowed behind the wheel. They put him in my car, my expensive, safe, reliable car, because they knew his own car had an interlock device he couldn't bypass. The realization hit me like a freight train. They didn't steal my car just because it was nicer. They stole it because it was the only car Connor could physically start. They had endangered everyone on the road. They had sacrificed my property, and when it went wrong, they tried to frame me. I took a picture of the old DMV letter. I took a picture of the hospital logs. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was loading the cannon. The summons came in the form of a voicemail from Aunt Brenda. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. Caroline, this has gone far enough. Your mother is a wreck. Your father is threatening to mortgage the house. We are all meeting at my place on Sunday at 2:00 p.m. You need to be there. We are going to sit down as a family, look at the paperwork, and figure out a solution that doesn't involve sending your brother to prison. Do not be late. I replayed the message 3 times in the quiet of my break room. A week ago, that message would have terrified me. The sheer weight of the family, combined against me, would have made me crumble, made me reach for my checkbook, made me apologize for being the victim. But I wasn't that person anymore. That person died the moment I saw spot 304 empty. I decided to go, not to surrender but to finish it. I arrived at Aunt Brenda's house at 2:00 p.m. sharp. The driveway was full. My parents' sedan was there, Uncle Mike's truck, and a rental car that I assumed was for my parents since I knew their insurance likely wouldn't cover a rental for a stolen vehicle dispute. I parked my rental, a compact economy car that smelled like stale cigarettes, on the street. I grabbed my file folder. It was thick now. It contained the police report, the hospital security logs, the affidavit from my charge nurse, the printout of Connor's DUI history, and the photos I had taken of the DMV letters. I walked to the front door. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Thud, thud, thud. I didn't knock, I walked in. They were all in the living room. It was a classic intervention setup. Linda was sitting on the floral sofa, clutching a tissue, looking pale and tragic. Harvey was pacing by the fireplace, his face a mask of simmering red fury. Connor sat in the recliner, his arm in a sling, looking bored. He was scrolling on his phone with his good hand, as if this meeting about his potential incarceration was just an annoying commercial break in his life. Aunt Brenda and Uncle Mike stood by the kitchen archway, arms crossed. The jury. "You came," Harvey grunted, stopping his pacing. "Good, maybe you have a shred of decency left." "Have a seat, Caroline," Aunt Brenda said, her voice stern. She pointed to a hard wooden chair placed in the center of the room, facing the sofa, the accused's chair. I didn't sit. I remained standing, clutching my folder to my chest. "I'm not staying long. You said you want." To look at the paperwork. I brought it." "We don't need your paperwork," Linda sniffled. "We need your signature." Harvey reached onto the coffee table and picked up a stapled document. He thrust it toward me. "This is an affidavit. We had a lawyer friend draft it. It states that you gave Connor verbal permission to use the car, but you forgot because of stress and exhaustion from work. It states that you are withdrawing the police report as a misunderstanding." I looked at the paper. If I sign that, I am admitting to filing a false police report. I could be charged. And since Connor is a suspended driver, my insurance will deny the claim. I will be left with $30,000 of debt and no car. "We will pay you back," Harvey shouted, the veins in his neck bulging. We are family, we will make payments. But you cannot let your brother have a felony record. It will ruin his future. His future? I looked at Connor. He finally looked up from his phone, offering me a smirk that was equal parts arrogance and pity. Come on, Care, Connor said, his voice dripping with entitlement. Don't be such a hard ass. It was an accident. I swerved to miss a deer. You're really gonna let me go to jail over a deer? It wasn't a deer, Connor, I said quietly. You were drunk. The room went deadly silent. How dare you? Linda whispered, standing up. He was not drunk. The police report said no breathalyzer was administered at the scene because he was injured. He was drunk, I repeated, looking directly at Aunt Brenda. And he wasn't driving my car because he needed a ride. He was driving my car because his own car has an ignition interlock device installed on it, and he knew he couldn't start it. That's a lie, Harvey roared. He doesn't have an interlock. Show them the letter, Caroline, I said to myself, opening the folder. I pulled out the photo of the DMV letter I had found in their house. I pulled out the public records regarding his 3 prior DUIs. I walked over to Aunt Brenda and handed them to her. Read it, I said. Aunt Brenda took the papers. She adjusted her glasses. The room waited. I watched her eyes scan the page. I saw her eyebrows shoot up. I saw her mouth open slightly. Harvey, Brenda said, her voice trembling. This says his license was revoked last year. Mandatory revocation for a 3rd offense. And it says an interlock device was ordered for his vehicle. That's old paperwork, Harvey sputtered, trying to snatch the paper away. Brenda pulled it back. It's dated 4 months ago, Uncle Mike said, reading over her shoulder. He looked up at Harvey, his expression darkening. You told us it was a speeding ticket. You told us the suspension was a clerical error. It's complicated, Linda wailed. The system is rigged against him. He made mistakes, yes, but he's a good boy. He took my car, I said, my voice cutting through Linda's theatrics like a scalpel, because he wanted to go party at the lake, and he knew he was too intoxicated to start his own vehicle. So he stole mine. He endangered every single person on the road that night. And you too. I pointed at my parents. You knew. You gave him the key. You unleashed a drunk driver onto the highway to save him the inconvenience of staying sober. We were protecting him, Harvey shouted. That's what parents do. No, I said, that's what accomplices do. I turned to Connor. The smirk was gone. He looked small now, sinking deeper into the recliner. And here is the best part, I said, pulling out the hospital logs. You told the police I gave permission at 7:00 p.m. on Thursday. Here are the security logs from St. Jude S. I was intubating a patient at 7:00 p.m. I have a sworn affidavit from my supervisor. You lied to the police, Dad. You lied to Detective Reynolds. That's obstruction of justice. Aunt Brenda looked from the papers to Harvey, then to Linda. The realization was washing over her face, the horror of it. They hadn't just asked for a favor. They had tried to frame me for a crime to cover up their son's habitual drunk driving. You tried to ruin her, Aunt Brenda whispered, looking at Linda with disgust. You told us Caroline was being greedy. You told us she was hysterical. But you were trying to make her take the fall for a felony. We didn't have a choice, Linda sobbed, collapsing back onto the sofa. He's our son. And I'm your daughter, I said. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. But that clearly never mattered. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. A heavy, authoritative pounding that made everyone jump. Aunt Brenda walked to the door, her face pale. She opened it. 2 uniformed officers and a man in a cheap suit stood there. I recognized the suit, Detective Reynolds. We're looking for Connor, Reynolds said, stepping into the foyer. His eyes scanned the room and landed on the recliner. And we're looking for Harvey and Linda. What is this? Harvey demanded. Ended, though his voice lacked its usual bluster. It was thin, reeking of fear. We received the supplemental evidence regarding the hospital logs and the ignition interlock status, Reynolds said, walking into the living room. It paints a very clear picture. Connor, stand up. You're under arrest for grand larceny, aggravated unlicensed operation in the first degree, and reckless endangerment. Connor scrambled up, panic in his eyes. Mom, Dad, do something. Sit down, Linda, Reynolds barked as my mother tried to lunge forward. He turned to my parents. And you too, filing a false police statement, obstruction of governmental administration, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. You'll be receiving summonses to appear in court. Do not leave the state. The officers handcuffed Connor. The click of the metal was the loudest sound in the world. He was crying now, ugly, heaving sobs, begging his father to fix it. But Harvey couldn't fix it. Harvey was slumped against the mantel, looking old and defeated, watching his golden child get dragged out the front door. I stood in the center of the chaos, holding my empty folder. Aunt Brenda walked over to me. She had tears in her eyes. She reached out and touched my arm. Caroline, she said softly, I am so sorry. I didn't know, we didn't know. I looked at her. I looked at my parents, who were too busy watching the police car lights flashing through the window to even look at me. I know, I said, but now you do. I walked out of the house, past the police cars, past the neighbors gathering on their lawns. I got into my rental car. I didn't look back. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but when they have grease, in the form of irrefutable digital evidence, they turn with crushing weight. Connor was denied bail initially due to his flight risk and the severity of the charges. He eventually took a plea deal 3 months later. He pled guilty to grand larceny and felony DUI. He was sentenced to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of strict probation. My parents didn't fare much better. They avoided jail time, barely, thanks to an expensive lawyer who drained their retirement savings. They were sentenced to community service and probation for the obstruction charges, but the real blow was financial. My insurance company, armed with the police report and the fraud attempt, went after them with a vengeance. They sued Connor for the value of the car, the guardrail he destroyed, and the environmental cleanup for the fluids leaked at the crash site. Since Connor had no money, the liability extended to my parents, who had facilitated the theft. They lost the lake house. It was sold at a distress auction to cover the legal fees and the civil judgment. I didn't go to the auction. I didn't go to the sentencing. 6 months after the incident, I was walking across the dealership lot. The sun was shining, bright and warm, melting the last of the winter snow. Here she is, the salesman said, patting the hood of a pearl-white SUV. It was newer than my old one. Safer. It had heated seats and a panoramic sunroof. I walked around it. I kicked the tires. I smelled that new car smell, chemicals and leather, untouched and unspoiled. I'll take it, I said. Financing, the salesman asked. No, I said, pulling a cashier's check from my bag. Insurance payout, plus savings. I drove off the lot an hour later. The car felt solid beneath me. It was quiet, secure. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from Linda. Caroline, please call us. Your father is depressed. We have no one. Connor is having a hard time in that place. We just want to see you. We're a family. We can get through this together. I read the words. I remembered the garage at 4:00 a.m. I remembered the demand to commit a felony. I remembered, you are dead to us. I pulled over to the side of the road. I didn't type a long paragraph. I didn't explain myself. I didn't need to. I typed 2 words. Not anymore. I hit send. Then I opened the settings menu and blocked the number. I blocked Harvey. I blocked the landline. I put the car in drive and merged back onto the highway. The road ahead was wide and open. The rearview mirror showed nothing but the road behind me, getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. I turned up the radio and drove.